Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the official United Nations observance of International Women's Day 2020. I am Generation Equality, realizing women's rights.
What defines a generation?
Climate justice! Right now!
Is it just about the year you were born? Or is there something more? We may have lived through different decades, different circumstances, different countries, but we all share in the global, everyday push for our rights, for justice, for a world that is equal. Perhaps what defines our generation isn't our age or our background, but the line in the sand that we have drawn. We take to the streets to speak out against discrimination, and we work tirelessly behind the scenes. We stand up for peace.
We are fed up with the war
and economic justice. We start with a statement and watch it become a movement. We have come a long way, but the fight isn't over, and our rights are still under assault. It is time to take action. Let us be the wake-up call the world needs.
The eyes of all future generations are upon you.
Be the first, the youngest, the best, and then make sure no one is left behind. When someone tries to silence you, raise up your voice.
Let us wage a global struggle.
Change everything, or change just one thing. As long as you do something, whether you're new to changing the world or have been in the fight for a long time.
Each knows exactly why we are here.
We are all together, united, for gender equality. And the future we create for women and girls is up to all of us.
Please welcome our MC for this morning, WABC's Eyewitness News co-anchor, Sade Badarinwa.
Good morning, everyone. How are my smart, bold, courageous, trailblazing warrior sisters today? I hear you, I hear you. It's that time of year again. It's International Women's Day. So, we need to make a little bit more noise than that. It's International Women's Day, ladies. There we go. We are here to celebrate all the ambitious, tenacious, phenomenal women who have hardcore grit and determination. Many of you are using your voice for activism to help move the needle. And just ask the Me Too movement. Oh, they've definitely made an impact. We won't stop, can't stop, until we get what we want and deserve. Sadly, it is 2020, and although women have made tremendous strides worldwide, we still have a long way to go. We are still dealing with many grave inequalities. Pay parity, still not reached. Even though women make up 75% of the world's workforce, globally, women still earn 78 cents to the dollar men make for doing the exact same job. Are you okay with that? Yeah, I'm not. And we're still taking a backseat in government and boardrooms. While women's representation is on the rise, women make up just 25% of world parliaments. We need to be in positions of power to make serious and substantive change, and most certainly changing laws that impact women. So we need more of you running for office. And when it comes to companies, sadly, 93% of Fortune 500 CEOs are men. Are you okay with that? I know I'm not. Because studies show that when women have access to education, microloans, are literate, have agency, are in power, and not victims of gender-based violence, then everyone benefits. Regions flourish. The world changes. Hello, generation equality. And take a look at this. This is why I want to make sure that all of you know about the important report that UN Women's Executive Director Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka will be launching later today. It's called Women's Right in Review, 25 years later after Beijing. So please, make sure you get this on the way out. It shows us where the world is on gender equality. It tells us that there has been some progress, but more girls are in school and women's health has improved, but much more needs to be done. You're going to hear a lot more about it a little bit later, so please, again, make sure you get that copy. And this is why we are here today, an accounting, if you will, to remind ourselves what we need to tackle in the new year. The baton has been passed to the next generation of women and girl leaders and gender equality activists. We celebrate all of these generations of change makers today. We've come to know remarkable young women of whom we only need to know their first name, like Malala, shot in the head at the age of 15, demanding girls be educated. Then there's climate activist Greta, unafraid, recently telling leaders, "You're failing us," that the eyes of future generations are on you. These young activists have learned a lot from the likes of many of you out here today, and also from women's rights activists and visionaries on whose shoulders they stand. Women like Sojourner Truth, who was born into slavery, was fighting for women's rights back in 1841 in Ohio. We stand on her shoulders, and countless others, including other first names that we know, Eleanor and Gloria, Wangari, and the notorious RBG, and other luminaries. We have come such a long way already, from the first International Women's Day more than 100 years ago, through 4 UN-sponsored world conferences on women, beginning in Mexico City in 1975, followed by Copenhagen, Nairobi, and of course, the momentous 4 World Conference of Women in Beijing in 1995, 25 years ago, when women's rights were finally recognized as human rights. And in fact, any of you out here were in Beijing 25 years ago? Can you rise? I see you. Sir, I see you. Please stand. Wonderful. You are our elders. We stand on your shoulders. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. In our program today, we're going to hear from an intergenerational tour de force of leadership. You're going to hear from the UN Secretary General, the chair of the 64th Commission on the Status of Women, and the youngest female prime minister in the world. We'll also, fantastic, right? We're also going to hear from a Nobel Peace Prize laureate and a 14-year-old climate activist who has gone from striking on Fridays to the international stage. So we have quite a program for you today. And we're also going to hear from some of the men and boys who support our fight, and I see a few of them out here today. You're kind of courageous being out here, surrounded by all of these women. Well, and speaking of he for she activists, it is a privilege and an honor to introduce our first speaker to open today's historic program. And he is someone who's been a champion of equity for women and girls his entire life and a dedicated supporter of the burgeoning youth activism led by so many young female leaders. So please welcome a standard bearer for generation equality, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres.
Excellencies, distinguished young guests, dear women and men, girls and boys present in this room. I wish you all the best for International Women's Day on Sunday. Gender inequality is the overwhelming injustice of our age and the biggest human rights challenge we face. I've said it before and I will say it again. Gender equality is a question of power. Men have used and abused power to control women and prevent them from achieving their potential for millennia. Deep-rooted patriarchy and misogyny have created a yawning gender power gap in our economies, our political systems, our corporations, our societies, and our culture. Women are still very frequently denied a voice, with their opinions ignored and their experience discounted. And in recent months, there have been plenty of examples. High-profile peace agreements have been signed without any women at the table. Emergency healthcare meetings on the new coronavirus were convened with few or no women. But women need peace and contribute to peace just as much as men, and maybe more. And women are vulnerable to illness as men, and they make up the majority of the healthcare workforce. There is no justification for women's continued exclusion. Dear friends, in recent years, I've seen a change. Women have had enough. They are protesting against femicide, the killing of women, in the streets. They are on strike for equal pay and conditions, and they are calling out powerful men for violence and abuse. Young women are redefining what power looks like. They are creating new inclusive forms of leadership that unite people across borders and around common goals. And I welcome some of these young leaders here today. Thank you for your activism and your advocacy. And please keep up the pressure. Please hold the world to account. We need your passion and conviction as we face a whole range of global challenges, from climate change to conflict. Generation equality cannot be generation gradual improvement or generation incremental change. Generation equality means equal rights and opportunities for all women and girls now. And that is why I'm determined to achieve gender parity at all levels at the United Nations, and I'm pleased that we have done so at senior levels 2 years ahead of schedule. Dear friends, without women's leadership and full participation, we will never achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development or defeat climate change. Women, particularly young women, are leaders on climate action. But I was not aware until recently that one of the founding fathers of climate science was a woman, a founding mother. In 1856, Eunice Foote, an American scientist and women's rights campaigner, believed changes in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere could affect the Earth's temperature, and she conducted an experiment with glass cylinders and thermometers to prove it. Her paper was presented at a meeting of the American Association for the Advancement of Science by a man. And 3 years later, another man published his own research on heat-trapping gases, which is considered the foundation of climate science. It started with a woman, but it was covered. Gender equality means finding and honoring women whose achievements were erased and ignored in their own time. Women like Eunice Foote, women like Katherine Johnson and their colleagues who worked for NASA on the Apollo moon landings, whose story was told in the book and film Hidden Figures. Women like Tu Youyou, who turned to traditional Chinese medicine to look for a cure for malaria in the 70s. Her discoveries saved millions of lives around the world and were finally recognized with the Nobel Prize in 2015. Women's stories matter, and representation matters. As Simone de Beauvoir said, and I quote, "Representation of the world, like the world itself, is the work of men. They describe it from their own point of view, which they confuse with the absolute truth." End of quote. Dear friends, when I was a child in many places, women were legally dependent on their husbands. They could not open a bank account or own property in their own name, and they were completely excluded from all positions of power. The change we have seen in my lifetime shows that progress is real and possible. But it has also led to a pushback. 25 years after the Beijing conference, progress on women's rights has stalled and even reversed. Some countries have rolled back laws that protect women from violence. Others are reducing civic space. Still others are pursuing economic and immigration policies that indirectly discriminate against women. Women's autonomy, including full access to sexual and reproductive rights, health and rights, is far from universal. Bias against gender equality is growing in some countries. And the first Gender Social Norm Index, published this week by the United Nations Development Programme, found that almost 90% of people, including women, interviews across 75 countries have at least one clear bias against gender equality in areas such as politics, economics, education, intimate partner violence, and women's reproductive rights. End of quote. Almost 30% of people in the world think today that it is acceptable for a man to beat his partner. We must push back against the pushback. We cannot give way. We refuse to lose the ground we have won. It is more important than ever for men to stand up for women's rights and gender equality. That is why I am a proud feminist, and why I am personally committed to increasing support for women's rights across the board at the United Nations. In the next 2 years, I'll do everything in my power to make sure women are represented in all decision-making at the United Nations, including in peace processes. Only through the equal participation of women can we benefit from the intelligence, the experience, and the insights of all of humanity. Thank you.
There we go. And thank you, Mr. Secretary General, for being here, and we appreciate your commitment through all of these years. Well, our next speaker is already a legend. When Sanna Marin was elected Prime Minister of Finland 3 months ago, she became, at 34, the world's youngest serving Prime Minister. And when media attention focused on her, she pointed out that women lead all the 5 parties in Finland's coalition government, and 4 of those leaders are under the age of 35. A social democrat, she has been a member of Parliament of Finland since 2015 and previously served as the Minister of Transport and Communications. And on a side note, we are fortunate that in this current condition in which we've been challenged by travel restrictions from the coronavirus, the Prime Minister was in New York and available to be with us here today. So we are so thankful she is here. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome today's keynote speaker, the Prime Minister of Finland, Sanna Marin.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor for me to stand before you in this hall on the eve of the International Women's Day. The General Assembly Hall is a symbol of multilateralism and the only venue where every country of the world will have its voice heard. Yet, the voices often heard in this hall are male voices. The number of female heads of states or government is only 21, while there are 193 UN member states, and while more than half of the global population are women and girls. Finland was the first country in the world to grant women full political rights, both the right to vote and the right to run for office. Finland today is a global champion of gender equality. I want to talk about what we have done, why we have done it, and what we all have left to do. Finland promotes gender equality because we see it as a cornerstone of our success in society. Our history has not been easy. For a long time, Finland was a poor agrarian country with deep social divides. Our path to one of the most developed and stable societies in the world has not been easy. Change does not happen overnight. We had to harness the resources of the whole society because we simply could not afford to disregard half of the population. Today, Finland is well known for many of its innovations, both technological and social. Social innovations in particular have made it possible for many people to combine their various needs and responsibilities. Finnish maternity and child health clinics, paid parental leave, and publicly funded quality childcare continue to play a significant role in advancing gender equality. Such a simple thing as free school lunch was introduced as early as 1948. It makes everyday life easier for families with working parents and kids at school. Policies like these were introduced by our female legislators. I argue that the best way to get gender transformative policies is to have more women in high-level political decision-making positions. I want to pay tribute to all strong women politicians and leaders in this room, in Finland and elsewhere, who have pioneered in advancing the rights of women and girls. Without their hard work and without role models, I would not stand before you today. On our path to where we are now, we have learned a lot from others and followed their good examples and practices. No country is perfect. I hope that our example can motivate and encourage others in their path to sustainable development. This is why we have the Sustainable Development Goals. Everyone has work to do. When it comes to gender equality, no country in the world has achieved it, and Finland is no exception. The Secretary General has launched the Decade of Action for Sustainable Development Goals, and he is right to push us to redouble our efforts. Time is running out. Achieving SDGs, including gender equality, will not happen by itself, but requires deliberate political decisions. More importantly, we cannot achieve the other SDGs and Agenda 2030 without achieving SDG 5 on gender equality. To ensure every human being has their rights respected and can reach their full potential. We, as world leaders, have all the tools needed to make changes that secure the future we want. Finnish government is committed to doing this. Our plan is ambitious, as small deeds are no longer enough. We need to raise the bar, we need to demand more of ourselves, and we need to listen to the youth who ask us to take action now. Finland has come a long way from where we first started, but we can do much more. We must ask ourselves, what are the policies that would help us in achieving a sustainable future? This has to start with mapping the challenges ahead of us. In Finland, our challenges include inequalities in the labor market and violence against women and girls. Inequalities in the labor market are not merely a question of gender, but a question of tomorrow's economy. I see that the digital gender gap poses a serious threat to the continued advancement of women and girls in the workforce everywhere. The girls being educated today are far too often not provided the skills needed for tomorrow's jobs. New products and services using artificial intelligence serve to reinforce existing gender bias. I want to change this, and the only way to do it is to get more girls coding, more women into high tech, and more women elected into positions where they can influence the regulations of the sector. Gender-based violence is one of the gravest human rights violations globally. We have to take action to eliminate all forms of violence against women and girls everywhere. We have to shift mindsets and attitudes to zero tolerance to all forms of violence, including sexual violence and sexual harassment. We must step up to challenge the actions and behaviors of others. Finally, we must end impunity. Attitudes and behaviors need to change, but we also need a justice system that ensures no act of violence goes unpunished. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are well into 2020, the super year of gender equality. I look forward to Finland's strong participation in and support to the gender equality, generation equality, and achieving concrete results in the Action Coalition as a follow-up what was agreed in Beijing 25 years ago. The theme of technology and innovation is of particular relevance. Digitalization and technology can be a game changer for societies and for girls and women, helping them to fulfill their potential and to break cycles of poverty. The Finnish government wants to ensure that girls and women are empowered to become agents and innovators in the digitalized world. Generation equality will allow us to strengthen our commitment and, most importantly, to put women and girls' rights at the center of technology, innovations, and digital transformation. I look forward to that initiative serving to prepare women and girls for the next 25 years. Dear participants, I am honored to be here today in the company of Executive Director Phumsile Mlambo-Ngcuka from UN Women. I thank her organization for the tireless efforts to promote and support women and girls. The Finnish government stands strong in our support of UN Women and all its work. Last year, UN Women led an initiative on addressing the gender impact of climate change. Women and girls are often hit first and will be hit hardest by the impacts of climate change. Yet, they are the least equipped with the skills and assets needed to protect themselves from shocks. They have also been remarkably absent at many levels, from negotiations, planning and implementation for climate adaptation and mitigation. Dear Secretary General, as part of the UN 75 celebration and as a follow-up to your climate summit, I ask for your leadership in finding ways to ensure the full participation of women and girls in climate action. Dear friends, when I look at the world today, the picture is, unfortunately, not very bright. Gender equality and women's rights, especially sexual and reproductive health and rights, are being widely challenged. Even support for the important women, peace and security agenda is eroding to the extent that survivors of conflicts-related sexual and gender-based violence would be denied necessary health services. There is nothing contagious in the needs for these services, and the UN Security Council sent a sad signal to the world by not being able to agree on the issue last April. We do not promote sexual and reproductive health and rights to be contagious or difficult. We promote them because they are a precondition for other human rights, development and gender equality. As long as women's sexual and reproductive health and rights keep being challenged this way, we will not achieve gender equality. Awakening support for the full and effective implementation of international human rights is an alarming trend. International human rights treaties were made for a reason. They are in place to ensure that every individual has a chance to lead a fulfilling life in dignity. Mr. Secretary General, as you said in Geneva last week, human rights expand the horizon of hope. They enlarge the boundaries of the possible. The member states would do well to reconfirm our collective commitment to the implementation of this vital normative framework. I want to add my voice to those rallying support to the rights of women and girls everywhere. These rights are my rights, and they are every girl's and women's rights too. I will not walk back on the progress we have made over the past 100 years, and I will push back on anyone who claims women do not need to present in government chambers and boardrooms or have say in the decisions that concern their lives. We owe this commitment to our mothers and grandmothers. We owe it to the generation that boldly negotiated Beijing, and we owe it to our daughters. But not only to them. Gender equality profits the whole society, all genders and all generations. Realizing gender equality and inclusion will free us all from the stereotypes that restrict us and set limits on what we can be and achieve. If we come together, learn openly from another, set our mind into action, I'm certain that we can achieve common goals. This is my message for you to take home for the International Women's Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister. At 34, the world's youngest serving Prime Minister. Incredible. And by the way, the first World Conference on Women in 1975 was led by a fellow Finlander, Helvi Sipilä. So, Prime Minister, you are carrying an incredible tradition of leadership. Thank you so much for being here today. And although he could not be with us today, the President of the General Assembly has sent us a video message, and we are delighted to share with you His Excellency Tijjani Mohammed Bandi. Let's take a look.
On this International Women's Day, we call on everyone, everywhere, to uphold gender equality as a necessity in upholding human rights. It has been 25 years since the adoption of the Beijing Platform of Action, which remains the most comprehensive global agenda for achieving gender equality. All member states should not only reaffirm their commitment to it, but work assiduously to implement it. We have made important gains since 1995. There are more girls in school than ever before, and many countries have reached gender parity in educational enrollment. However, no country can claim to have achieved gender equality, especially in terms of income and political leadership. Change has been slow for most women and girls in the world. We have much work to do. In this context, I welcome stakeholder engagement across the globe, inspired by women's movements and energized by youth activists who call for wide-ranging structural and systemic changes necessary for accelerated progress. As we enter the decade of action and deliberate to implement the Sustainable Development Goals, we must mainstream SDG 5, gender equality, across all of our work. This ensures that women and girls have the opportunity to participate equally in all decisions. As we celebrate 10 years of UN Women, I call on you to support the intergenerational campaign, Generation Equality, to guarantee that equality becomes a lived experience for everyone, regardless of gender. By working together, girls and boys, women and men, we can galvanize multilateral action to realize the human rights of all women and girls. As we commemorate the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, let us not forget that equality is one of our most cherished goals as an organization. I thank you.
Well, as you've heard today, 2020 is a pivotal year for the accelerated realization of gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls everywhere. In commemoration of the 25th anniversary of the adoption of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, the Commission on the Status of Women will convene in this room on Monday to adopt a political declaration reiterating member states' commitment to the implementation of the platform and its contribution towards the full realization of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Well, now, it is a special privilege to have the chair of the 64th session of the Commission on the Status of Women with us today. With government experience of more than 2 decades, please welcome the ambassador from Armenia to the United Nations, His Excellency, Mr. Mahir Magarian. Please welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Your Excellency, Secretary General, Your Excellency, Prime Minister of Finland, distinguished delegates, special guests, friends. As chair of CSW 64, I want to wholeheartedly congratulate all women and girls on the upcoming International Women's Day. The Commission on the Status of Women, as the principal policy-making body of the United Nations for Gender Equality and Empowerment of Women, was planning to have a session befitting this anniversary year with wide participation from civil society, government officials, young people, and other stakeholders from around the world. We are all saddened that due to the global coronavirus disease situation, it has been necessary to scale down this year's session. But on Monday, 9 March, CSW is expected to adopt a political declaration that will reaffirm Beijing Platform for Action and to commit to its full, accelerated, and effective implementation. Today, we are here to celebrate the promise of Platform for Action. 25 years after its adoption, we reflect on its profound meaning and effect as we applaud the achievement of many women and girls who have been and who are changing the world as we speak. A quarter century ago in Beijing, the United Nations Fourth World Conference on Women culminated in adoption of historic Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. A momentous and progressive global agenda, the platform created a blueprint for member states to advance women's rights and empower all women and girls everywhere, a reality without which the world can neither achieve nor accomplish its potential and tremendous challenges that this century, like all prior ones, inevitably brings. That 17,000 people from 189 countries gathered in Beijing in 1995 meant that gender equality was on everyone's radar. The rights of women finally became global matter, and we thank all women and men who took part in the achievement. Gender equality and the human rights of women and girls remain global issue 25 years after some of you in this hall gathered in Beijing and at 3 world conferences prior to that in Mexico City, Copenhagen, and Nairobi. Our world will never be at peace so long as gender equality and exchange of basic human rights between men and women are regarded as privilege and luxury. That is unnatural. It is not natural that women are paid less than men for doing the same jobs. It is not natural that violence against women runs rampant and is even used as a weapon to break down societies. It is not natural that in this 21st century, not a single country has achieved full equality. We also recognize that much of the resistance faced by gender equality advocates 25 years ago still remains, and the backlash against women's rights today has taken on new forms. Dear friends, now is not time to slow down. Now is time to take leaps. Each year, we are welcoming more women into upper levels of political leadership with the highest rate of 61.25% women in parliament in Rwanda. Yet global average of women MPs remains at 24.9%. That is almost the percentage of women represented in parliament of Armenia. I take heart from the future generation. To all young women and girls, and to my 2 daughters, 19 and 9 years old, I would like to implore, do not wait for the torch to be passed on you, but take the lead on your own. You are to accomplish what it has taken the international community to accomplish over 25 years. I'm reminded how across every nation, women and girls are taking center stage, making their voices heard and changing the world that we live in. In my own country, Armenia, our recent national experience reaffirms the critical role that women play in public life, as they have been at the forefront of revolutionary transformations, acting as guarantors of peaceful and lasting change. The question we need to ask to ourselves and each other as representatives of member states, United Nations entities, and non-governmental organizations is what needs to change, and how do we ensure that change and progress that follows is irreversible. We need to re-examine and rework the system, be cognizant of the patriarchy that created it, and alter it so that the system works for all of us, beginning with women and girls. The change needs to be systematic, institutional, cultural, and global. This is what we are here to celebrate and to remind ourselves today, that we are the instruments of this evolution, and that together we can alter the course for future generations of women and girls to ensure that we all and the world at large reaches its full potential. I know that it is possible. I believe that together we can do it. I thank you.
We are the instruments of the revolution. Don't wait for the torch to be passed. Act now. You are absolutely right, Ambassador. Thank you so much for your words. And as the Ambassador just said, we had to actually scale back this event, so I wanted to thank each and every one of you for being here. You survived the virus. Nothing happened, everything's okay. But all of you showed up to really make this event today, so thank you once again. Well, now it is an incredible honor to introduce our next speaker, someone who many have admired for years, the extraordinary Liberian peace activist responsible for leading a women's nonviolent peace movement. The women of Liberia Mass Action for Peace helped bring an end to the Second Liberian Civil War back in 2003. Her remarkable journey of courage and accomplishment was chronicled in an award-winning documentary many of you may have seen called Pray the Devil Back to Hell. If you haven't, you are going to want to see this as soon as possible. So please welcome the amazing and truly incredible 2011 Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Ms. Lima Bowie.
Thank you, Shadi. Your Excellency, Antonio Guterres, the Prime Minister of Finland, the Executive Director of UN Women, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, next generation women leaders, happy International Women's Day. In 1999, my work consisted of talking with ex-child soldiers in Liberia. One of the days I had a conversation with one who had been 9 when he was recruited, and by 16 he was amputated. We had a conversation that day about many things, and then we started to talk about sexual violence. My question to him was, Joseph, did you ever rape anyone during the war? His answer to me was no. I raped no one. I realized that it didn't sink in, or he didn't understand my question. So I asked him again, did you ever force any woman to have sex at gunpoint? And he said, oh, that's what you're talking about? Yeah. Isn't that what women were made for? Several years later, my enthusiastic 9-year-old, who's now 21, goes to school on this very day, International Women's Day, and say to her friends, celebrate the girls. Today is International Women's Day, because when you have a mother who's a feminist, you think everyone is enthusiastic about feminism. And a little boy stood up and said to her, shut up and sit down. What are women good for but to make babies? When we play these two stories in our heads, it paints a picture of the narrative not just around women and girls' bodies, but around every issue affecting the lives of women. 25 years ago, all around the world, women celebrated the victory of the Beijing Declaration. The celebration was primarily because at last the world was recognizing women's rights as human rights. There was a firm hope that concrete actions and steps would be taken to address those critical areas that were adversely affecting the lives of women and girls. The declaration was going to ensure that we had control over our lives, our destiny, our bodies, and our periods, and even our future. 25 years later, we're watching a continuation of old challenges. The increasing threat on women and girls, the increasing threat on the rights of women, spaces and places that were created to challenge human rights violation continue to be places now that oppress and suppress the rights of women. The term that I hear most of the time as we protest in Liberia and other places, is just women. Not women for justice, J-U-S-T, just women, has become the term that many people, including decision makers, use to underrate and undervalue the work of women. The term just women brings us to a place where we can't even begin to have conversations about our human security needs because the values have been taken away. The intentions of just women is meant to downplay the significant contributions that women make on a daily basis to keep all of us at a place where we have to say no to issues affecting us. Just women shut the door firmly on any idea or intention to have a conversation about equality. Fortunately, and not unfortunately, this conversation about equality must be held. In such an unjust and unequal world, gender equality must be more than just simple numbers and counting on equal measures. Gender equality must be an understanding that equality is linked to our collective humanity. It is linked to peace and justice, which for me means being willing to radically transform the systems and structures that hold women and girls down. These radical transformations must be actionable. One, political will. The UN, for many years and years, we've come here on this day and during General Assembly to push for those rights that we feel are being taken from us. The UN is as strong as its member states, and member states are as strong as their citizens. It is incumbent upon governments sitting here and back home to move beyond the rhetorics of women's rights and begin to take action that will lead to change. Our rights should not just be important during election season, they should be important at all times. Resources. We cannot continue to have a conversation about funding for women's rights. Women's issue cannot continue to be underfunded. We're in New York. No one goes to the store to buy diamonds with peanuts. Ownership. 25 years ago, as a young mother, I did not own a computer. Neither did I have a budget. Nor did I ever dream about standing at this dais at the United Nations, let alone have a dream about being a Nobel laureate. However, those were the days where I was armed with my conviction, my Bible, a notebook, and a pen. Those were the days when I challenged the community status quo that girls were not supposed to sell their bodies as a means of feeding their parents. Those were the days I challenged the young men with guns, defying them to come and try to rape one girl. I asked questions of soldiers at checkpoints for arresting young men from my neighborhood, what their crimes were. My living room was our Beijing. The community women were taught how to bake and were encouraged to get involved in economic activities that would make them more independent and save them from domestic abuse in every shape and form. Young girls were mentored to seek education as that was the only means of them escaping the harsh realities of their daily lives. That enthusiasm is what I saw in my grandmother and my mother, and that is the same enthusiasm with which women engage Beijing. And that enthusiasm, women must be reharnessed so that we can begin to reclaim the spaces that we've lost. It's time for us to own our issues. We must own our agenda. We must own our narrative. We must bring along the next generation of women. The struggle for equality is a long way ahead, but with young women on our side, we can surely win. I am gender equality. I am generation equality. Who are you?
I told you she was powerful. I'm for gender equality. You know, I love when she said it's incumbent upon governments to make sure that real changes happen. And it's not just during election time. Thank you so much for setting up your living room as the Beijing. All of us doing our parts. Thank you again. And now I'd like to welcome the founder of Earth Rising, Uprising, 14-year-old Alexandria Villaseñor. Please come. And our next speaker, she represents the extraordinary climate youth movement that has burst onto the global scene. You've done a lot. So young. In December of 2018, as a 13-year inspired by Greta Thunberg, she began sitting on a bench right outside of this very building here. Every Friday, for 63 consecutive weeks, she has since gone on to become an international leader in the climate change. I'm so proud of you. I just wanted you to stand right here as I talk about you. In a short walk, but she has come a very long way for the bench outside of this building. Please welcome her here on the stage. So proud of you.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the United Nations International Women's Day celebration. It is a great honor to be here today with so many inspiring mothers, sisters, and daughters. My name is Alexandra Villaseñor, and I am a 14-year-old climate activist. Over a year ago, on Friday, December 14th of 2018, I went on school strike for the climate right outside this very building. And as of today, I've been on climate strike for 65 Fridays in solidarity with Greta Thunberg and the Fridays for Future movement. However, my activism began before my strike, when I saw the Northern California community I was born and raised in go up in flames. This fire was called the Paradise Fire, and it was the most devastating wildfire in California state history. Over 150,000 acres burned, nearly 20,000 structures were destroyed, and many people died. Scientists told us this wildfire was accelerated and intensified because of the climate crisis. And after this fire, I saw Greta Thunberg speak at COP24, and that's when I knew what I had to do. Since the start of my activism, I've become a national and international organizer for the global climate strikes that have occurred this past year. The most recent global climate strike occurred the week of September 20th, 2019, when over 12 million young people all around the world went on strike for the climate. As an organizer from the beginning of this movement, I noticed something very interesting. All of the lead organizers from around the world are young women. Women are leading the climate movement. I wondered why this is the case, and that's when I learned women are disproportionately affected by the climate crisis. Women are responsible for over half of the world's food production, which is in turmoil due to climate change. In developing countries, women are responsible for collecting water in over 70% of households, and therefore more susceptible to floods and droughts. 80% of our planet's biodiversity exists on indigenous land, and indigenous women are on the front lines protecting it. Many indigenous women are risking their lives protecting our planet, and they've gone missing and are being murdered. When climate-fueled disasters occur, such as intensified hurricanes, floods, and droughts, women are also on the front lines of disaster response. Women care for their families and communities, and women also lead the way in repairing their homes. Women are the closest to the damage the climate crisis is inflicting on our planet, giving them a unique knowledge and understanding. This is why women are creating the solutions we need for the climate crisis and leading on their implementation. I believe that within the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 5 is the most important goal for us to achieve. SDG 5 is achieving gender equality and empowering all women and girls. SDG 5 advances all of the other SDGs, including quality education, poverty alleviation, clean energy, reduced inequalities, good health and well-being, zero hunger, clean water and sanitation, decent work and economic growth, and most importantly, climate action. I also believe in the power of educating women. Millions of girls around the world are denied their right to education. 2/3 of the illiterate people in the world are women. We must change this in order to save our planet. Educating girls leads to family planning, fewer children, and longer life expectancies. Educating women makes them better stewards of the land, and the emissions coming from their homes and community decreases. Women are the key to solving the climate crisis. To create the change we must see in the world, we have to address the social conventions that underlie gender inequality and the destruction of the earth. We need systematic change to challenge the patriarchy, colonization, and capitalism. Women are the peacemakers of the world and mothers of the planet, and we're able to unite across borders to resist all of the systems of oppression so that we can create a healthy planet and livable future for all of humanity. Thank you.
Wonderful job, Alexandria. We are all so proud of you here, deciding that there was an issue that you wanted to do something about, and you did it. 14 years old, speaking here at the United Nations. I know your parents must be proud. Well, now it's time to, pick up the energy here. We've got a big treat for you. We have somebody with a powerful, powerful voice. Her name is Angelique Kidjo. But before we do that, we do have to say goodbye to the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. And first of all, we just wanted to say thank you so much for coming here again today to celebrate International Women's Day. You have been a huge supporter of us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. He has a lot of other pressing matters to get to. A lot going on here at the United Nations. So as I was saying, we will be hearing from Angelique Kidjo. She is one of the greatest artists in the international music scene today, a creative force with 14 albums to her name. In fact, she won her 4th Grammy just 2 months ago when her new album, Celia, was named 2020 Best World Music Album. Time magazine called her Africa's premier diva, and she's not just a great international music star. As a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador, Angelique uses her voice as a strong advocate for children's rights. So please, let's welcome Angelique to the stage.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. How y'all doing? Can I have a little bit more of my voice in the monitor in the front here, please? So the next song is about education. I dedicate this song to parents that believe in education, as my parent did, and send their kid to school. More education we give to our children, the better the world is. So I'm going to teach you what you're going to sing with me. We're going to sing along because you have been sitting down listening to all those people speak, blah, blah, blah. Then we're going to sing it. So I'm going to sing this. I'm going to go, kelele, kelele, and you're going to answer, oh, kelele, baba, wa. Can you repeat that? Kelele, kelele. Kelele, kelele, oh, kelele, baba, wa. Okay, the second one. Kelele, kelele. First one, oh, kelele, baba, wa. Kelele, kelele, oh, kelele, baba, wa. Let's do it without me singing it. Kelele, kelele. Kelele, kelele. Yes. Now, I want you to sing louder because you sound too asleep for me. It's Women's Day. Come on, don't be giving me nothing tired. Because we are not tired. We wake up in the morning till the end of the day, we have energy. Right? So I count on you. If the guys don't want to sing, you guys just take over. All right? Let's do this. Yep. Aburo mi mojarella 같이 쉐이쉐어좀미 Aburo mi mojarella 같이 쉐이쉐어좀미 이완이 어머라 어머 바바 이완이 어머라 어머 바바 이완이 어머라 어머 바바 라로니 몰라 시쉐오 kelele, 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 kelele. 아부로 미 모자래라 같이 쉐이쉐어 좀미 아부로 미 모자래라 같이 쉐이쉐어 좀미 이완이 어머라 어머 바바 come on 이완이 어머라 어머 바바 이완이 어머라 어머 바바 라라니 몰라 시쉐오 come on kelele kelele yes kelele 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 ba jeni logun odurere ba jere baba o ah ba jeni logun odurere aye baba gojule ah ba jeni logun odurere baba jere baba o ah ba jeni logun odurere aye baba gojule remember so 같이 쉐이쉐어 미 이완이 어머 얼라 어머 바바 Iwani Omo Ola, Omo Baba. Oh, hey, 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 hey. Oh, kelele, kelele. Kelele, kelele, kelele. Aburami, mojarela. Katishe, ishe, ojami. Iwani Omo Ola, Omo Baba. Iwani Omo Ola, Omo Baba. Oh, hey, 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 hey. Well, well, well. So, I have a couple of things to say. Today is a Women's Day. It's good that we have a Women's Day, but every day should be a Women's Day. Me, I am for transmission general gender equality, because gender equality has been taught to me by my mom, my dad, my grandmothers. My father always used to say, intelligence has no gender. I never felt that my gender has anything to do when I was growing up in Benin. So if my father, an African man, empowered my mother to be a free person and empower his 3 girls to dream big and to go out there and to transform the world, to link the brain and the heart to do anything they want to do, so we all can do. My father always used to say, machism of man is just a fear of the strength of woman. And it's true. I don't know what it is in power. You don't have power when you start using it, you lose it. If your power is denying other human being, your partner of life, the right to live, why are you having children with that person? If you don't respect that person, what does it make you? Are you still a human being? And I don't think there's any man that have power without women having power. That's the thing that we have to understand. We have to teach our boys, young boys, and young girls from the early age to respect one another. To tell your young boy, your power is in the way you treat women, not the other way around. So we've been sitting here year after year talking about women empowerment, gender equality, and we produce 75% of the world wealth. Why aren't we going on strike for 1 month and see how the men do it all around the globe? Because I think we talk and doesn't make any difference. Action is what they understand the best. Uh-oh, this is more moving. I don't know, this is you in here. Okay. I think some action has to be taken, like the young generation in front of that are fighting for climate change. We need to mobilize all generations. We need to come together and come up with a plan that will force government and men in every position to understand that without us, what they have, they will lose it. As long as we stay on the level of talking, just talking, we won't get nowhere, because somebody that have the power won't give it away very easily. So if we want, we women, want gender equality, we have to stop talking and start acting on a daily basis in everything we do. A man come home, there's no food, let him go cook. There are so many things we can do. We have so much power, yet the man has the capacity of making us believe that we are under their thumb, that if they ask us to jump, we're going to say, how high? Why should we? Didn't we bring the men to this world? Or have you seen a man getting pregnant and giving birth to any child? As my husband said when I give birth, he said, if it's up to us men, there's no more humanity. You can't deal with it. So, for me, I have a father that has taught me that respect has no sex. My father never told me, because you're a girl, you can't do this. He would ask me, can you? You want to give it a try? Go for it. No man on this planet gonna tell me that it's not possible to empower their daughters, to respect their women, and that the suit they put on to go make money, that suit probably is made by women. So Women's Day have to be also day of action. What are we gonna do to get the men attention to realize that we are not puppets? How do we teach the next generation coming not to go through the same fate we are going through, that the ones that have come before us are going through? How do we stop our young girl being married and being mother at the age of 13, 12, and 14? That is a shame for all of us. If we do not, everywhere in the world, empower women, we cannot call ourselves human beings. And that is the core of what I do. As a young girl born in Benin, in a family of 10, I've been fed with my empowerment by my father, my mother, my grandmother. My mother's mother always used to tell me, your first husband is your job. Women have to have access to finance. Finance justice is at the core of gender equality. Because if we talk and there's no action, how do we have a proof for the next generation coming to take a lead in her own life? Yet, the banking system is rigged with men. Where are the women making loan, interesting loan to women, not microloan that have so much? The price of microloan is killing the poorest of the poorest in Africa. So let's talk practically, let's move, let's have a coalition of decision. Let's stop talking at one point and put the men in the position where they feel, they wake up in the morning, they go, oh, my life today is gonna change because the woman that is taking care of me, that everything is going fine in my life, is not here. Let's do this. Stop talking, action.
Love it. Angelique, thank you. What a voice, right? You know, sometimes in life you just don't realize the impact that you're going to have on others, and certainly generations from now. So was the case for one very inspirational woman who made over decades, which has inspired an entirely new generation. Wangari Maathai grew up in Kenya, where she became a renowned social, environmental, and political activist. And among many accomplishments, she started the Green Belt movement, planting trees involving all generations. And in 2004, she became the first African woman to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for her contribution to sustainable development, democracy, and peace. Let's watch a video that brings to life how one person's story, their indomitable spirit, can inspire an intercontinental and intergenerational impact for years to come. Let's take a look.
Today, we are faced with a challenge that calls for a shift in our thinking so that humanity stops threatening its life support system.
It is now time that we work together, old and young, rich and poor, and together we can plant 1 trillion trees. We can start a 1 trillion tree campaign.
When it comes to big challenges like gender equality, like the climate crisis, we need young people, we need our generation to get involved. Because what Wangari Maathai showed is that those big changes in society and in politics don't always necessarily come from where you would expect them. That individuals can mobilize large movements that can truly drive change in a country but also globally. So that's why we need to all get involved. My name is Felix Finkbeiner, and I am Generation Equality, because only together we can plant a better future.
now you're in for a real treat. We've got a fireside chat. So if all the ladies, if I call your name, if you can come to the stage. Charlotte Bunch, she's our first panelist and an international feminist trailblazer, a leader of Beijing Conference and founding mother to a whole generation of international feminist activists. Not every leader is a strategist, but she is both. Charlotte Bunch, please come to the stage. We've got Aaron Phillip, born in Antigua and Barbuda. This barrier-breaking young woman was diagnosed with quadriplegic cerebral palsy as a baby. She grew up with the internet and developed a love of fashion, and at 16, resolved to become a model. At 18, her advocacy has broken numerous barriers, working as a model to improve visibility for marginalized identities in fashion and the broader world. Aaron Phillip, thank you so much for being here. And I'm also pleased that we have a chance to hear from the youngest member who has been on stage, someone wise beyond her years. Please help me welcome back Alexandria. And please also welcome to the stage Lima Bowie. She is coming back with us. And last but not least, we have Ms. Phumzile Mulabo Ngugoka, the head of UN Women.
Thank you very much. I have this star-studded panel. I want to start by saying Happy Women's Day. Happy Women's Day also to our many partners and colleagues who couldn't be with us today because of the health restrictions. Some of them are watching at home or wherever they are. I say Happy Women's Day to them as well. We have this panel. We will try and go down memory lane. What happened in Beijing? And we will also hear what have we been doing in the interim years, making peace in countries and fighting many other struggles. We will also hear what these women as individuals have tried to do to bring about change so that we can all feel that we can all be the change we want to see by listening to their story and what they have done. So without any waste of time, Charlotte, you are a trailblazer. Because of you and many other women, such as Katia, who I see here, we now have the 16 days of activism. That's you being strategic. But you have been at this for a long time. Tell us what happened with the 4 world conferences that culminated in Beijing.
Okay, hello. It's wonderful to be here, thank you. And I just want to, in the spirit of generation equality, start by thanking those women who came before me. There really were some before me. The women in particular, the women peace women and the women suffragists who were very active in the founding of the UN. And just one little moment of that I want to pay tribute to, which is that's how we got human rights universal declaration instead of a universal declaration of the rights of man, which is what many people were still calling it. So even from that moment, to have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was the work of women who had gender consciousness at the time of the founding of the UN. And I could continue, and I do in my classrooms, but I'll stop with that example, just to say every generation has its moment. And Beijing was the culmination of that moment for my generation. But let's be clear, Beijing in 1995 didn't spring out of nowhere. Beijing 1995 was the largest UN World Conference ever held. And it was so big and so important because women in the women's movements all over the world, from the grassroots to women politicians and judges, built an engagement with the UN from at least 1975, an International Women's Year, Mexico City onward, and some were doing it before that. And in that engagement, we had what I call an amazing global public space where women emerged on the global agenda. And that was because women were, for the first time in this arena in large numbers, engaging with their governments as part of the UN process of negotiation. We're engaging regionally in all their regional negotiations. And they were doing this throughout the period from Beijing, throughout the period from Mexico City to Copenhagen to Nairobi. But in particular, I want to also pay tribute to the Nairobi Conference in 1985, because that was the World Conference on Women where we saw visually that we were a global women's movement, that there were feminist and women's groups in every country and every continent. And that was a particularly dynamic moment. And I think global feminism really emerged out of that Nairobi moment. So these were moments before the internet. Those of you who are younger can't imagine the way organizing happened before the internet, where we found each other and we learned from each other the cross-cultural discussion that women had across lines of difference, the notion and importance of inclusion. All of this led to the 5 years leading up to Beijing, which was the World Conference on the Environment, the World Conference on Human Rights, the Cairo International Population Conference, the Copenhagen Social Summit. So by the time we got to Beijing, we had been organizing across many lines with an effort to be inclusive and also with a knowledge of how to work this UN system that had come through that World Conference engagement with women's movements everywhere. In that way, we were able to produce a Beijing Declaration platform for action that is comprehensive. It's not comprehensive of everything. We're always learning and adding, but is a very strong statement of the human rights of women in relation to major topics of health, of violence against women, which emerged from this process as a UN agenda, and in relation to poverty, the feminization of poverty, the understanding of women's particular connection, and of course, women and peace and the work around armed conflict. The final thing I want to say about it is this process had both its engagement in the platform, but it was also a process of NGO forums with thousands and thousands of women learning from each other, space that was possible because the UN was holding these conferences. And in that space, you see women's movements engaging with each other and building the basis for what I think young people represent today as an intersectional feminist movement, an intersectional women's movement that understands that all issues are interconnected, that there isn't any such thing as just a women's issue, but that women care about the entire globe, and the ability of women to bring our perspectives into all of that. All of this came together in Beijing. So for the first time, you really have the world looking at violence against women and also looking at women and the environment from this new perspective. It was very exciting, and the final thing I would say is that framework is still there for us to build on to the future.
Thank you, Charlotte. Well, that was a bit of history, and I can agree with you that Nairobi was a moment where we truly saw a global movement. I was a youth delegate in Nairobi. Believe it or not, I used to be young. And indeed, in Beijing, it then all came together. And many promises were made in Beijing, which many people like you, Lema, then had to implement. How has it been for you to be an implementer and to participate in making sure that the promises that were made in Beijing come true by the initiatives that you have led.
Thank you, and to say to Charlotte, I salute you, and to all of the women who went before us, because it's truly a sign of Ubuntu that we are because of what all of you have been to us. So thank you. I think the moment of Beijing and the moment of all of the declarations that came before Beijing has been a moment that led to not just a push for the work that I do, but I would feel like I came into this by accident. A survivor of war, someone who was socialized to be a feminist, to care about the other. It was a nudge, because as we lived through the war and saw all of the threats to the rights of women and girls, I was 17 when the war started, and I realized that my body at that age was like a thing that was on the war front. Every time we went to look for food in a particular area, there was this one checkpoint that had this very ugly guy that I had to kiss before I passed.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. It was not until someone who knew me from the government went to him and said, stop harassing her. But he would wait every morning. And imagine it's almost like you're kissing a chimpanzee, I'm sorry to say, but you have to close your eyes tight. But that was the only way I would pass to go. And then few months later, I see that this is not just a threat to me, but this is a threat to girls in my community who are much younger than I am. So when I say I came into this by accident, it was a time, a place, the period that pushed me into this. And what I realized is that you couldn't do this gently. You had to be radical about the way you wanted to see change. I didn't have a gun, but I had a voice, and I realized that that voice was something that I could use in a very radical way to gain attention to what I wanted to do. Later on, when I learned about Beijing and all of the different things, it was all of the ammunition that I needed to move forward in the work that I do today. What has been one of the greatest joy for me is that as I have been in this space, I've been able, especially on the continent, to interact with older women who were like Mama Mongela, like BC, like all of those women who were part of, including yourself, to say, this is the way. So, and that has really informed the way that I work. I can't sit here and claim that all of this work that I do for peace and justice and equality came out of nowhere. It came from the work that has been done, but also is from a place where women who have gone before us continue to show the way. With the young women today, I think it is, for me, is deliberate. Today I came with 5 or 6 of them because I felt like it was important for them to be in this room to listen to the conversations that we're having, because most times my dining table is a place where we talk feminism, my daughters, their friends, my nieces, and everyone who come. And sometimes I don't seem to understand their own interpretation of feminism, but I also feel like we don't spend enough time telling the history about the struggles that we've gone through. So young women take a lot for granted, and I will pause with this. I was in The Hague when we unveiled the bust of Bertha von Suttner, who was the one of the few women to win, first woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize. And she was the first woman to have her bust unveiled in the Peace Palace in The Hague. And whilst we're at that conversation, there was they created this space where some young feminists came for us to talk about the strides that have been made in the work that we do. And there was a lot of condescending topics, especially about Africa, that feminism is not for the West, it's for Africa now, they've been able to achieve. And there was this one professor who said that he was very upset, But he feels like it's time for us to begin to tell the stories from Mexico to Beijing to Kenya and to all of the things that we've done. Because until we tell the stories about the struggles we've made, young people will take for granted that there was a lot of struggles that have been made, including for the rights for women to be pregnant and teach in a class in this country. So now I spend my time not just mentoring young people, but also helping to bring them along, because I feel like when our generation, and I'm not very old, but I still have to plan for the future, when our generation decide to step aside, we must leave women who are bold to stand in front of world leaders and speak the truth. Call red, red, and call white, white. And this is what I think I've been able to do. I feel like if my voice was ever taken from me, I would have nothing to contribute to the struggle. And that's why I'm grateful for Charlotte, for yourself, for Katia, for Mama Mongela, for all of those women who came before us, because they've shown me that I can use my voice in ways that will shake the powers that be. But I think it's now time for us, and I've done that all of my life, move away from just using our voice to going back into the community and using our hands. I think we spend too much time in conference room talking to the converted already. It's time for us to take political spaces, make the men uncomfortable, and get the things that we need done, or we need to get the rights that we need for us to get those rights.
Thank you. Yes. You can see that this is truly intergenerational. Each one of us has been able to stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. And that is why we are generation equality. Because every generation feeds to the next. But we all remain the same because we need to continue to support each other. Alexandria needs Charlotte. Charlotte needs Alexandria. Take it away, Alexandria. Tell us how you have been able to be the leader that you are. You are an early starter, and you are so strong. How do you do it? Fighting to save the planet.
Yes, well, first of all, thank you for having me here today. I think that a lot of the inspiration that I get does come from the personal experiences that I've had. And so I talked a bit about the Paradise Fire that happened, and that was such a traumatic moment, seeing how California was being affected by wildfires. During that fire, my hometown actually reached hazardous level air quality, and I had to find ways to keep the smoke from coming into my home, so seal up the windows and doors. I had to roll up wet towels to prevent the smoke from coming in. And that was a moment that made me see how something has to be done, because this is becoming the new normal, having to protect yourself from events that are fueled by the climate crisis. And so I think that there's one specific moment as well that the Paradise Fire taught me, was seeing how during the fire, when it was happening, the campus, the community, they were handing out these face masks to keep out the smoke particles that were harmful. But I saw how those masks weren't actually keeping out the smoke that was harmful to your lungs. And so that was my first experience to see how we are very unprepared for the effects of the climate crisis. And that's why we really have to start focusing on adaptation and mitigation. And that's one thing that has followed me even now to my activism, that I always strive for, is finding solutions and how can we start adapting. And there are so many things that I think that people get into activism and it's all in their own story. How have you been affected? And that's what I always tell other people too, is look towards your own climate story and then tell people about it, because your story does really matter on how you've been affected, how your communities have been affected, because that way you can also impact the solutions and policies in your community. One of the things that as well just continues to inspire me to do this is the connection with activists I have all across the world. I am every single day inspired by activists who are continuing to work, especially activists in the Global South, because they work so hard, and I'm always inspired by them. And I've made so many connections with other people, and I'm happy to call other activists my friends now. I even there's an activist here, Mary Ellis from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm so grateful for having to have met all of these people. And so I think that that's what young people today, what we're starting to do is we have this solidarity, and we're starting to redefine what sisterhood means. And that comes through in the way we organize and how we take actions, is how can we do this together? And it's that sense of unity. And so I continue to be an activist because of all of the people that I work with and the solidarity that there is.
I want to be Alexandra when I grow up. Thank you so much. We can get the feel that when we meet in Mexico for Generation Equality and see many young people like her, we know we will learn a lot. And also when we meet in France with also many young people, civil society, different people from different sectors and walk of life, we will be able to truly bring together the energy that resides not just amongst the people we always talk to, but the people we don't always talk to. That's the idea, to bring everybody together. And now for someone who is also a pioneer, who has defied all convention and has taken center stage. Aaron, you are a true inspiration. Can you tell us about your journey?
Hi everyone, how are you? I'd like to thank you so much for having me. This is a major, major, major honor. The first thing I noticed as all this was happening is just how touched I am of the narratives of women, especially women of color, and the intersectionality and unity of women. I'm always so touched by that. So I want to thank you for letting me take part in that today. I'm so honored, really. I think it's fair that I tell y'all about myself. My name is Aaron Phillip. I'm 18 years old. I work as a model with Elite Model Management in New York City. I live in the Bronx with my brother and my father. My mother resides in Antigua at the moment. And wow, I have had quite the journey as a model. I got into modeling being that I was very self-aware from a young age as to who I am and what makes me myself. So I love fashion. I've always loved fashion. I thought fashion was so beautiful and special. And I thought it represented so much of the culture that we have in the world, considering beauty and aesthetics and, what makes someone beautiful and what makes clothes beautiful. That's what models are responsible for. Models model clothes and models make things beautiful. And, within the fashion culture and within public culture and celebrity culture itself, models are celebrated. And hence we have supermodels. But I never ever saw a supermodel like myself who was in a wheelchair or who was, black per se. I mean, I knew Naomi Campbell because, of course, I literally love her so much. But, Naomi was the only one that I ever saw, growing up. And that affected me being that I never quite saw someone like myself. And then that feeling intensified when I was 14. And I realized that I didn't conform to the conventions or the norms of gender, per se. I came out as trans when I was 14. I came out as non-binary at first. And then when I was about 16/17, after some figuring things out, as teenagers do, I realized that instead of being a non-binary feminine person, I was just a woman. I was just a girl. And I wanted to live my life as the girl that I knew that I was. And then I realized also within the fashion conversation going on in my head, I don't see many transgender women represented or doing big things in fashion like they should. And, why should trans women be involved in fashion? Because trans women are women at the end of the day, and there needs to be that intersectionality within recognizing and uplifting women. you know? So, when I was 16 between 17 really, I decided that I really wanted to be a model. I didn't know how I was gonna go about it. I didn't quite know what to do, but I knew social media. I literally grew up on social media, being that, you know, in real life, I didn't have much of a sense of community, being that I was ostracized in public for being disabled as a child. Like, I would go to the playgrounds and all the kids would look at me and stare at my wheelchair and like run away from me, and I'd be like, what are you doing? And I just realized that, like, you know, if they don't want me, I'll find people who do. So I took myself to the internet, where I started to surround myself with all this new information and people and, you know, just that sense of community that I needed. And it helped me grow. And through helping me grow, I realized that I can utilize the internet to get the things that I want and pursue in life through talking and storytelling. So I decided to take it to Twitter one fateful day after school. A couple weeks before that fateful day, I had took digitals with my friend at a park in like Manhattan. But I posted those mentioned digitals to Twitter with a caption that was made to purposely provoke people, provoke thoughts, provoke the action of thinking. You know, I wanted to make people think about the fact that you've never seen someone like me, and why haven't you? How can we change that? So I took to Twitter and I did my little thing. I posted it. I posted a tweet about wanting to be a model. To my surprise, it got about like 90,000 likes and retweets on Twitter, so it went like mega viral. And I literally fell out my wheelchair a couple times thinking to myself, like, oh my God, how is this really happening to me? I just wanted to speak. Then I realized that my voice has power and that I need to continue using my power to proceed with the things that I wanted. So within me doing that tweet, I actually started to get some jobs. I was freelancing. I wasn't signed to my agency as yet. My goal, penultimately, was to become a signed model to a major high fashion agency so I can book major high fashion jobs, being the person that I am, being that I'm no different from any other model, despite what people may or may not think about me. That was my goal. And I had to get to that goal somehow. So I started out from the bottom, I guess, you know. Not that freelancing is the bottom, because freelancing is a lot of work and a lot of discipline and a lot of, you know, especially as a woman, freelancing is hard. And as a young woman especially, who's, you know, jumping into this field that many young women don't go into unless they are brought in by people with power already. So freelancing was interesting, being that I got jobs, very, you know, odd jobs, and then as more press started to get a hold of my name and what I was doing, I wanted to become more articulate about the person that I am. And I told my story all the time, but people decided to tell my story for me. And then I was labeled, and labels are not good. People would often label me in the press as Aaron Phillip, the black trans-disabled model, versus me being a model. When I see myself as a teenage girl from the Bronx in a wheelchair by way of Antigua in the Caribbean, that's who I am. I never really thought of myself as a black trans-disabled model, but I went with it for so long, being that I thought for a second there that maybe it could help people find interest in me and who I am. But I realized that me being the black trans-disabled model is not who I am, it's what I am. Who I am is Aaron Phillip, and I want people to know me for who I am. So somewhere along the line of me gaining all this press and attention, I started working really diligently. I remember I was in my senior year, and I was signed in my senior year, but end of junior year, I started working almost every day. The whole summer was dedicated to working. A lot of people were telling my story and getting attention towards me, and then before I knew it, my agents at Elite were so moved and inspired by my story and the things that I was doing, they decided to sign me, which was a major moment in my career.
Wow, wow.
And from then on, I've continued to tell my story, and I still aspire for my goals to be a regular high fashion and runway model. I'm still aspiring towards those goals. I'm working towards them every single day. I'm very disciplined towards it. But it's also worth mentioning the fact that as a disabled woman in the high fashion industry, that can be a very tough road to navigate, being that there hasn't been any rep for disabled women in high fashion except me and my great friend, Julian Mercado. And that's something that needs to be talked about, because why haven't there been models in wheelchairs and models with disabilities doing things that models can do? I feel like, that's kind of excluding the narrative that, because fashion should be for everyone, and everyone is inclusive of all women, and disabled women don't get enough rep or love that they deserve. So, more than anything, I think now, as much as I can, I want to continue the conversation of how, in high fashion, brands can accommodate and start to think about moving forward with realizing the potential and the ability of women with disabilities as people working in high fashion for major things, not just like patronizing things, like really major things, because everybody deserves to be major. And that's where I leave you with this.
Thank you. Well, Aaron's story says to us, if not me, who? And if you do not step forward, you will not open the path for yourself and for others. Thank you so much for taking the right step and for being Generation Equality. And all of you have presented to us the stories of your life, which are all groundbreaking. In closure, Charlotte, tell us, we've had the journey, we've learned from Aaron about the power of technology and that we have today, which enables us to reach far and wide. Where do we go from here with the work that we still need to do?
Well, that's a very big question, but I think we're already seeing the pathways in the people that have talked today and that are active in the world, particularly of all generations, but particularly the young people. I just want to say first that one of the things we face in terms of where we go today is the backlash. And I think it's very important to recognize, I think the Secretary General said it, and it's really true, that some governments and other political forces in the world are very actively engaged in trying to put back all that the Beijing platform and the women you've heard today stand for. And there's a very clear reason, because we've touched a nerve. We've touched the possibility of profound social change. Some of us call it patriarchy, along with many other systems that are based on the idea that one group should dominate another, whether that's racial, cultural, national, or gender-based. That idea is the idea that is also threatening our planet, the idea that we dominate those who are different, or we dominate our planet rather than learning to live with difference and to make that the source of our strength. So I think that the backlash is very focused on sexual rights and reproductive rights and the right of women to control our bodies, but it is much more than that. It is a backlash that is against, it is a backlash that understands controlling our bodies is fundamental to taking our own power to be a part of those changes. And so to me, it's all a part of the same picture. So whatever issue and work someone takes on, all I ask is that you see how it's connected to everything else. And I think that's where we have to go in the future. We have to be more clear that the social movements, the movement around climate change, is clearly an urgent movement today, and that that is intimately connected to changing the way we think about our Earth, the Mother Earth. She's letting us know right now, with all of these disruptions and viruses, that we are not going to survive in this battling against and controlling over mentality. But it also starts in our homes, where we learn very young that violence over children and women is the order of the day in so many families. So the notion of domination over rather than living collaboratively with seems to me to be the paradigm that all of us are moving toward and must move more rapidly in order to bring the change. I just want to say two things about young women. I heard someone say, don't wait. I would say they're not waiting. In the universe I live in Latin America, young women started the Ni Uno Menos movement. They've started the dance of naming the perpetrator of rape that has gone all over the world. Women are in the streets in many places, but I speak of Latin America in particular because they haven't been as much in this panel. And they are moving. They are not waiting for me to hand the torch or anyone else. Young women are moving on the climate. We've seen that. We know that. Young women are moving in resistance to the domination they experience, and I think that is the starting point for all of us being engaged in this movement together. So I would say to the young women, don't let anybody hold you back. When we were in Beijing, our song was Never Turning Back. Never Turning Back continues to be, for me, the issue that we must, the attitude that we must take. But it's not only defending Beijing, because that was one moment. It's advancing all of those ideas to where they are today and engaging with women of all ages and thinking about how do we continue to achieve gender equality as a core principle of the kind of equality we need for all people, the kind of nonviolent relationships, because I think violence is so centrally taught through violence against women, even when it's violence against men, it's repetition of that idea that this is how you control each other, that this is how you live, that fuels our wars, that fuels our war on the environment. So I think that we take this forward by never turning back, but by also thinking creatively of the future and seizing the initiative, not being put in a defensive posture, but understanding that we are the future and there will be resistance, but we are moving forward, never turning back. And I'm so happy to be with some of the younger sisters here today who are engaged in that already. I say, keep on keeping on. Let's dialogue about strategy. My advice is to keep doing what you're doing and do more of it. And don't let anybody tell you that you shouldn't.
Thank you. So can I also have your last word, your parting message to the audience?
Well, I think at this moment, everyone is saying that it's the moment for women. There are a few things that I think we need to do. We need to reconsider collaboration, how we work together. It's very important now for us to stop working in silos. It's time for us to bring all of our thematic concerns or all of our issues together and say, how can we forge ahead? Because first thing, we have funding issues. And the more we do it from a singular perspective, the more difficult it is. But if we're able to come together and see how our issues are interconnected or interrelated and then try to forge ahead, that's the first thing that I think is important for us as we move forward. The second thing, when it comes to community groups, and this probably will, I think we need to now begin to see strategically how funding can now be linked also to collaboration. Recently, there was a huge conversation with some members of the EU how groups are competitive, women's groups are competitive when it comes to funding. And I feel like because the calls for funds are structured in ways that pit us against one another, I think if we're doing these things, we should ask that groups come together under similar themes and apply. Let's encourage that kind of, in the rural community, link with one group in the urban community and see how both groups can apply for funding instead of urban groups fighting rural groups and trying to get money that they may not get because they don't have the kind of sophisticated language in proposal writing, even though they're doing the hands-on job. Finally, I think every event now that we do, every journey that we take as a movement should consider front, center, in every corner, bringing along young people. We are starting to do this, but I think it's important for us to do it. I like what Gloria Steinem said, and this is what I think I can leave with this group. Men, women, boys, and girls, we live in a time where we are linked and not ranked. And I think that's important for us to consider.
Wonderful. Thank you. Alexandra, your last word?
Yeah, so I think one thing that I want to leave here is just the thought of how the climate crisis is going to be impacting our generation right now and future generations. When I think about my future, I am, of course, scared and worried about it because I see how climate change is going to affect where I live, where I go to school, if I decide to have a family or not. And so that is why I think that all of us need to constantly be striving to change the narrative on the course that we're on. So I'm very grateful, though, that this past year that we have raised the public knowledge of climate change. There are more conversations about what is happening to our planet now. And so that needs to continue happening. And so what I urge everyone here to do is to start talking to others about the climate crisis, whether people want to hear about your climate story or not. Tell your community members about what is happening to our planet. Make your voice heard at every level of government that you can. Lobby your council members. Make sure that they are listening to you and what your community wants to see. And to all of the adults in the room, one thing I really want you all to do is just take climate action and to go out and vote. Because I'm only 14 and I won't be able to vote for many years. And I also can't wait till the time that I'm able to vote or till I'm in a position of power for us to get climate action, because by then it will be too late to solve this crisis. So I want all of you to go out and vote and make your voice heard. For those who can't vote, I also, with any elections that are coming up, one thing that I think would be great to see more adults doing is give your vote to your young person. For the upcoming elections this year, my parents will be giving me their vote so I can make my voice heard, because this is now the decade for action. And so see how you can use your vote for the future generations. Thank you.
Wise beyond years. Thank you. Aaron, your parting shots?
Yes. I was just thinking about this entire event and, the meaning and what it is to be a woman in the world right now. And something that I've been thinking about is the fact that every woman is a woman. Women are multifaceted. They are intergenerational. They are international. Women are limitless, formless. Anything that makes a woman woman is a woman. And I feel like the world and patriarchy and systems have done such a good job at trying to force an image or a projection on what women should be in the world, and the implications of that upon society and the world as a whole has been devastating. And I can say and it feels so weird because I feel like, in a way, I'm always trying to think about, my identity. And at the moment, I want to be nothing more but a teenage girl from the Bronx who just lives her life, does her job the way she wants to do her job, and defies what people expect of her. But in a way, I truly am objectively a Black trans-disabled model, and I'm also a Black trans-disabled girl. And Black trans women are at risk right now in society for existing. We get shunned and shamed and discriminated against, and our experiences are discredited. We get killed for existing as who we are. And it would be wrong of me to not call action to that, being that I am a part of my sisters, and I do it all for my sisters. So when I think about myself and when I think about women, I want to call attention to the fact that I want you all to hold women in your heart, think about what makes women women, and think about what you can do to truly push the culture forward in the way we respect, treat, and include women in the dialogues of society and in business and whatever you want to do. Just include and emphasize the fact that women are women, and love and respect and tolerate women for exactly what we are. And women are the world.
Thank you. So for this International Women's Day, which will be on Sunday, but you're meeting it halfway, these are your thought leaders. These are the women who have inspired us and given us a lot to think about. And I'm going to ask them, and we'll all congregate around Aaron, to help me release this report, which is the report that is a summary of the many reviews that you produced, looking at your countries and what you have achieved in the last 25 years and what still has to be done. This is rich in data. It also captures the data that was generated by civil society and some of the data that we used to triangulate the information that came from the UN agencies and other very, very important sources of data. So it is very rich. Look at it. Thank you.
Thank you all for that fireside chat. Alexandria, Charlotte, Aaron, Lena, your words were inspirational. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to call over the executive director as we get underway quickly. Great. You're going to give us our closing remarks. And what a day.
What a day.
What a day, Phumzile. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shade. We are drawing to a close. And I'd like to thank the panelists for their very interesting ideas and sharing the stories of their lives. I also want to thank especially the guests who spoke to us earlier today, the speakers, the Secretary General, the message from the PGA, the Prime Minister. It's really been a reflection about how far we've come and how far we still have to go. Because up to date, a lot of work has been done, but our best is not good enough. And as we think of Beijing, let us also acknowledge with deep thanks and solidarity the health workers in China and everywhere in the world who are selflessly attending to the health crisis. In many cases, also risking their own lives. I want to give a shout out to those who are not here today and thank them so much for the support they have always given this occasion. We have been reminded not just of the work that we still need to do, but of the strategies that we have to adopt in order to succeed. We have highlighted the importance of cooperation, of working in an intergenerational manner, multi-stakeholder manner, and this is what we intend to do with Generation Equality and the action coalitions that will bring different stakeholders to work together. I want to also thank the team in UN Women that put together this event. This year was different because we did have to deal with many challenges, but thank you so much for making it as interesting as it was. In future, as women, and as this report that we've just released says, we don't want to squeeze into 25%, because what has come out of this report is that women occupy 25% of the space in power and in places of influence. 75% of the parliamentary seats are held by men. 73% of managerial positions are held by men. 70% of climate negotiators are men. So there's this 25% that we're being squeezed into. Today, we are breaking out. We want to march to the 50%, because 50% is what really matters. And we want to work together to achieve that 50%. We also, in this report, learn many lessons that show us that change is possible. If you were not pushing against the pushback, things would be much worse. So we cannot and should not be discouraged. It has to be forward ever and backward never. And these young people that we've seen today have shown us that they are ready for the task, and so are we. And together, we can make the positive change. On Monday, as we meet for the Commission on the Status of Women, which has been scaled down, we will be thinking about the many women that could have been here, the many activists that could have been here, the many delegates from governments that could have been here. And we want them to know, wherever they are, that when there is an opportunity for us together, we will do our best to make that happen. But right now, that is not in our hands. And we regret that we have not been able to celebrate the 25 years of the Beijing Platform for Action in the manner that we had envisaged. I also want to compliment the member states and many other stakeholders who have embraced generation equality. We're looking forward to the Forum of Generation Equality in Mexico and in France, where we will complement the many actions that the member states are also taking to advance the agenda. So together, we will build the society that we want, and together, we will make the changes that we need to make. It is not yet time to rest. We have a lot of work to do. But for the rest of the day, happy Women's Day. Give yourself some time to enjoy what you have achieved. Thank you.
Emcee, thank you so much. I just wanted to say it has been such a pleasure to be here with you as we celebrate International Women's Day. And I have to say, I'm also very proud, coming from WABC TV, who has recently decided to partner with the United Nations for a very special that you're going to see come up here on the screens. It is marking the 100-year anniversary of women's right to vote. WABC TV, ABC7, has again teamed up with the United Nations for a special look at trailblazing women fighting for gender equality across the globe. It is this Saturday at 7 p.m. on Channel 7, and I hope all of you will watch it. Are you going to watch it? Wonderful. Again, 7 p.m. on Channel 7. You know, I want to close by, first of all, thanking everyone who helped make today happen. Can you please rise? All of you here, can you please rise? Who made today happen? Yes? Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I just want to close by thanking all of you, the rest of you, for coming here today. And I can't wait to see all the doors that we open in 2020. And I certainly can't wait to see the futures we transform for women and girls. And before we leave today, we are going to close the event with a special song. We are one with Broadway singers. If you can come up here on stage, we'd love to hear you. And this song was actually created for UN Women International Women's Day. So let's take a listen, and thank you again, everyone.
In Kigali, she wakes up. She makes a choice in Hanoi, Nepal, Ramallah. In Tangier, she takes a breath, lifts up her voice in Lahore, La Paz, Ramallah. Though she's half a world away, something in me wants to say, we are one woman. You cry and I hear you. We are one woman. You hurt and I hurt too. We are one woman. Your hopes are mine, and we shall shine.
And what is she? The truth, she reaches out and teaches others how to. Her name, she lives without shame in Manila, Salta, and Poo. They're different as can be. We're connected, she with me. We are one woman. Your courage lifts us all. We are one woman. You sing, I sing along. We are one woman. Your dreams are mine, and we shall shine. We shall shine.
And one man hears her voice, and one man hears her fight. Day after day, he lets go the old ways. One woman at a time.
We are one woman. Your victories lift us all. We are one woman. You rise and I stand tall.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we invite you to rise and join us in song. We are one woman, your victories lift us all. We are one woman, you rise and I stand tall. We are one woman, your world is mine, and we shall shine. We shall shine.
And one
We shall shine.
and one many
We
fights
shall
are
shine.
till our day is
We shall shine. We shall shine. We shall shine.
Please, can you join me in thanking the singers, but also our wonderful, wonderful mistress of ceremonies for a stunning job. Thanks, Shadi. Thank you so much.
We fill the room.
Congratulations, my sister.
I didn't realize you